Hello, everyone. I had the privilege of knowing Dr. Kenneth Reid since 2012, and I had the honor of hosting him in one of my webinars long time ago. And this is the recording of that webinar. And it is a very important webinar, a very important video for you to watch, especially if you are a starter in the trading business. And I usually say, unless you're getting married today, you need to watch this video. So hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about a condition that I refer to as adult ADD. ADD, for those of you that may not be familiar with the sort of psychological jargon, tends to stand for attention deficit disorder, attention deficit disorder. But in traders, as Simon was mentioning, it tends to be attention surplus disorder. In other words, it tends to look much more like an overfocus on the market, not an attention deficit. And that's one reason that even though we might joke about traders having ADD, and I think a lot of them do, a lot of us do, it's not really taken very seriously because we don't act like we have a deficit of attention, and it's true, we don't. This presentation today is for educational purposes. Okay, it's not therapy, and it's not intended to diagnose or treat any medical condition, including ADD. Okay, but I'm using the term because it's also a popular term and a good shorthand term, as Simon was mentioning. Okay, so who am I? I'm a psychotherapist. Actually, I have a private practice, an ongoing private practice in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm also a trading coach and have coached traders since 2002. I've been a private trader doing the swing trading of stocks, day trading index futures. I also am a pundit. I've presented on CNBC and written for Forbes and Smart Money. I actually write about the market every day. But what really excites me is working with traders on a coaching basis that have the symptoms of adult ADD, simply because I've had to overcome it myself. I know it from the inside out, and hopefully can save people some time as they work through it. So today we're going to look at a few topics here. What is adult ADD and why should you care? How does it manifest in traders and trading? There's both an upside and a downside to it. You'll have an opportunity to take a quick self-test to find out if you are at risk, and a way to get more information, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So let's start with the upside of ADD, okay? Adult ADD, or whatever this syndrome is, okay? Adults with ADD are often exceptionally creative. In fact, we compulsively take the road less traveled. We tend to be superbly intuitive, even visionary. Often we've been the rainmaker or the creative force in a company where we worked before, some kind of a leader, entrepreneurial person. Typically, people with ADD have started companies, often more than one. We tend to be enthusiastic about challenging projects, and we're especially enthusiastic at the beginning of things, but we tend to have less follow-through, which we'll talk about later. We are passionately entrepreneurial. We are willing, we're even eager to take risks, which makes us naturally gravitate to the markets, okay, as traders, because hey, this is an opportunity, we can take risks and have fun. We are actually highly competent multitaskers. In fact, people with this ADD thing, we like to multitask. It's normal for us, okay? It's very difficult for us to just do one thing at a time. We're also extremely spontaneous and flexible and able to go with the flow. That's sort of the upside of what you might call lacking discipline, okay? And we'll have to talk about the downside here, okay? But you could say, no, I don't lack discipline. I'm going with the flow. I'm flexible. And you know, that's actually a good thing in the market as a trader, because the markets never really behave exactly the same way twice, okay? And we don't either, unfortunately. So let's talk, though, about the downside of ADD, because it's the downside that gets us in trouble, okay? It is a disorder. The second D, it stands for disorder, okay, that impairs one's ability to organize information. The key word there is organize. It impairs our ability to consistently follow rules. The operant word there is consistently follow rules. We might follow a rule on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but we're going to break it on Tuesday and Thursday. It impairs our ability to inhibit impulsivity. This is a little double negative here, okay? What this means, just flip it around, is we tend to be impulsive, okay? Some other aspects to the downside, okay? Yeah, well, I guess, you know what, this slide's actually in the wrong order, okay? Excuse me. We're going to flip through that. The downside of these factors leads to poor timing in our trading, okay? It also tends to make us seek too many, seek experiences, adventure, if you will, in many markets with many indicators, many systems, many time frames, many methods. We become excessively multitasking and therefore scattered. We will tend to overtrade, like Simon was mentioning at the beginning, in an almost addictive manner. And when I say addictive, I'm talking about what Simon was referring to, which is this, it's like a tendency to try harder, a tendency to over-engage rather than disengage, okay? And we can do that very easily. We tend to substitute creativity for planning, all right? We rely on our strong suit. Our strong suit is creativity, but we will, we prefer creativity over planning. The planning is the last thing we really want to do. We might do it after the market is closed or before it opens, but in the actual process of trading, planning can fly out the window, okay? And we start relying on intuition and our creativity. We also tend to take unnecessary risks, and that would be, for example, going for the home run, taking too big of a position size, holding a trade overnight just because you're really sure you know what's going to happen tomorrow morning, okay? That sort of thing. We're also unable to follow our own rules. So you may develop a trading system, but you'll find it difficult to follow your own rules even when you want to. As a result, ADD traders tend to have a boom-bust equity curve or a break-even equity curve, okay? If you've been working on self-control and self-discipline, you may be at the break-even equity curve. But most likely you've already worked through some boom and bust experiences. One of the real problems with adult ADD, though, is that the harder we try, the worse the results. And this has to do with what Simon was mentioning before about stress, okay? And it turns out people with this condition do not do that well under stress. And so managing stress becomes critical, okay? When we're stressed out, if you have this condition, you're going to miss the obvious, okay? You're going to look at it later. You're going to see what you're going to look at your chart after the market closed or after you've done trading for the day. And you're going to go back and go, oh my God, look at that. It was right in front of me and I didn't see it. All right. You're also going to tend to have emotional swings, highs and lows, and this is from being overly engaged with the market, okay? Being over-focused on every price bar, on being overly invested in the every little up and down, okay? And overall, there's also a tendency to think of the possibilities that we can recognize. I mean, we recognize possibilities, we recognize our potential, but it's very difficult to actually achieve it for these particular reasons: poor timing, over trading, poor planning, and so forth, which leaves people with ADD perpetually on the verge of greatness. Okay? So, Mark Douglas talks about this indirectly. He doesn't refer to ADD in particular, of course, but he talks about trading not being about prediction, but being about probabilities. And this is his key point. He says, because we can't know what the market will do at any particular moment, we need to know what we will do, no matter how the market behaves. This is Mark's version of have a plan, trade your plan. Have a plan and trade your plan. For some traders I know in this room listening to me right now, it's not all that difficult to follow Mark's advice. There are people in this room who really do trade according to a plan. And I suspect those individuals in this room are probably have the best trading results, okay, on a consistent basis. There may be days where some of the more creative or spontaneous traders will beat them, but over the long run, traders that can follow a plan are actually tend to perform the best. For the majority of traders with some degree of adult ADD, however, it is virtually impossible for us to accurately predict our own behavior while trading. Now, this is quite something to admit. All right, it's like the first step in AA or something like that, admitting that you're powerless over your condition. And I think what Simon was saying in the beginning was that his recognition that there's times when he really does lose control has really helped him maintain control. He knows the difference between being out of control and being in control. That's what we want, okay? So take a look at yourself and look at yourself honestly and determine whether you can actually predict your own behavior. It's an extremely important question to ask yourself and to face. Now, where does ADD come from? There's some evidence that it arises from genetic factors. There's also some evidence that it may be related to exposure to cigarette smoke in utero or in infancy, okay, either from the mother or the father in the house. And other causes are really pretty unknown, okay. But it does affect the brain. We know that. It affects the actual wavelength of the frequency of the brain, in particular in the prefrontal area. Okay. Now, traders are responsible for organizing and analyzing the randomized price data that comes to us into tradable patterns. And the prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain that does that. It's our organizing and analytical function. Unfortunately, ADD shows up in SPECT scans, that's a certain kind of brain scan, as areas of low metabolism in this very area, okay, in the prefrontal cortex. Now, in order to compensate for this low metabolism, individuals with ADD often seek stimulation. But there's a paradox here. the need for stimulation and the need for self-discipline work against each other in traders with ADD. As a result, this can lead to an emotional imbalance and a meltdown. And I would say our job as traders is to maintain this balance, is to become aware of this balance and maintain it. The balance between the need for stimulation and the need for self-discipline. This is actually very critical. We have to find the sweet spot. And for us, it's particularly important that we don't pass the stress threshold because of our tendency, actually, to melt down. So what's a trader meltdown? Well, it's a mental emotional state in which you're actively engaged with the market, but you're not actively engaged with your trading plan, right? You may be trading like a banshee, but you'll also be fighting with the market. Or you might be fleeing from the market. Or you might be frozen in the face of the market. Okay, maybe you're in a trade that you're not going to get out of. You get stubborn. You get frozen. Maybe you're getting shaken out of a trade. Your trades way too easily, and then of course they go exactly in the direction that you thought they would. Maybe you're just fighting with the market and refusing to take losses or taking them over and over and over and over and just trying to show the market that, hey, like Invictus, you're still standing and the market didn't really hurt you. Well, when in a meltdown, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. All right? So we become highly reactive and we experience cognitive distortions. That's an inability to perceive the obvious, like we spoke about before. We might, oh, wait a minute here, let's see, this is a little disorganized. Oops, I'm going to miss that slide. I don't know how to go. I can't go back on this actually because I'm just going forward. We're going to miss the obvious, okay? Fighting and fleeing and freezing are innate survival responses. But once they begin to cascade, neither willpower nor self-talk will actually stop them. Okay, they have to run their biological course. They're triggered because your trading is now affecting the same part of your brain that's in charge of biological survival, which is the amygdala. It's that little spot there in the midbrain, okay, sort of right behind your, you could think of it right behind your nose, okay. This is a part of the brain that's the size of an almond. Amygdala means almond in Greek. And it has the authority in emergencies to turn off your prefrontal cortex and take full charge of your body. And it will take full charge of your mouse finger. And you will find yourself either getting in or out of a trade in a more impulsive manner when the amygdala is activated. So, here's a question. Would the symptoms of adult ADD help you or hurt you in a trading environment? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. According to a study of Taiwanese day traders, and they studied about, I think it was 400,000 of them, 80% lost money. And a follow-up study reviewing 14 years of data indicates that only 1% made high profits 2 years in a row. Okay. Now, we don't know if these people that had ADD, but we know from this that even in a bubble, even when the market is almost like going up every day, 80% of traders still lost money. Now, some people don't lose money. Some people, I'll call them in the trading elite, have a mix of genetics and practice, you could say, that allows them to stay cool under pressure. The military screens carefully for these individuals. So do hedge funds. And in fact, the ideal hedge fund trader is a former Ivy League athlete who is smart, highly competitive, and has little emotion. You know, think of like a football quarterback. Cool under pressure, very competitive, and very smart. All right? Now, here's the question. Do you think you have adult ADD? Do you have some of it? How bad a case might you have? In children, it's usually ADHD and tends to be overdiagnosed. But in adults, ADD is often well disguised and underdiagnosed. It's well disguised because by the time we reach adulthood, we have compensated for it in various ways. Adults compensate for ADD by over-relying on our strengths and delegating the things that are difficult for us to do, right? Like paperwork, like planning, like doing the dishes, straightening the house up. Okay? But if these tasks are not delegated, they're often selectively ignored. Now, there are standardized tests for ADD and ADHD, and you can go to your local psychologist and get one. Your medical doctor might also be able to give you one. On the next slide, however, we're going to do an informal 1-minute ADD self-test. It's going to have 11 questions on it for you to answer. And it's just a yes-no test. All right? But if you're nervous already, and would you type in yes in the chat window if you're feeling nervous about this test? Type in and just see if anybody's nervous.
I'm not.
You're not.
Because I know what it is.
Okay, I'm looking for, where's my question box? Okay, I'm not seeing it there. At any rate, people with ADD often have high test anxiety, which is a sign of stress, a sensitivity to stress. And what that means is that in the market, in your trading, you will tend to get nervous just because of the risk involved. Okay, so you can use your test anxiety as a kind of reference point or a tell about your own level of nervousness really in trading. Often, as Simon was saying earlier, often people, when we're trading, we often don't even know how stressed we are, and we don't know how nervous we are. It's important to know. Okay. So question number 1, do you overtrade? Just write down yes or no on a piece of paper or in a notepad or something like that. Do you overtrade? Yes or no? Do you have timing issues in your trading? That means impatience or impulsiveness or missing out. Do you fight, flee, or freeze while trading? Fighting with the market, fleeing from the market, getting shaken out, or freezing. Do you have Post-it notes on or around your computer screen? If you try harder, do your trading results tend to get worse? Do you roll through stop signs? Now, this is a question that has nothing to do with trading. But do you? Do you wait to fill your gas tank until the warning light comes on? Interesting, huh? Do you read directions only as a last resort? Do you usually file for extensions on tax returns? Are you aware that October 15th is October 15th your regular tax filing date? Is your trading desk or trading room cluttered? Not everybody with ADD type symptoms has a cluttered desk or trading room, but many do. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
You have 10
questions.
Yes.
10 questions. Okay. Consult with a professional for a real diagnosis. Let's score this now. If you scored 0 to 1, you're exhibiting very few signs of adult ADD. And I suspect that you're already a profitable trader. I really do. If you scored 2 to 5, you have some symptoms of adult ADD. I suspect you're a break-even trader. And I'd like to hear from you all in the question and answer period about this. If you're willing.
I was 2.
You were? Oh, you were a 2. Okay, good. If you answered yes to 5 or more, you have many of the symptoms of adult ADD. You're likely to be a boom-bust trader or have a steadily declining equity curve. Now, not everybody needs to disclose all this stuff, but something to keep in mind and think about. Simon says he's a 2. Okay. If you have 2 to 5, but you're focused on managing your tendencies, I still wait for the light to come on my gas tank before I fill up. I do. We have to manage it. We have to learn how to manage our issues, some of which will not change. They won't. Okay, well, what can you do to make a difference for yourself? You can educate yourself on adult ADD in general. There's a book by Dr. Daniel Ammon called Healing ADD. It was published about 10 years ago. You can get it on Amazon, and it's very inexpensive. I recommend you read it. It talks about 6 different types of ADD. 6 types. How about that? Trade sim until you master your system. I would add to that, trade sim until you have a high level of wins to losses. High level of wins to losses, because if you have the ADD thing, you're going to have difficulty tolerating the losses. As Simon was saying in the beginning, one loss might throw you off. One full stop might throw your trading off for the whole day. You're going to have a sensitivity to loss. You're going to need to have a very high win-loss ratio. Excellent.
It helps a lot to trade with a group or with a buddy, with a friend. It helps a lot because, you guys will alert each other of things that you're not supposed to do. Sorry, go ahead.
That's right. That's the one that's, I think, missing right there in the, okay, it's right there. Define a trading system and follow it. But you absolutely have to have a trading system and you must follow it. Trading intuitively, trading from your gut, it's just not going to work. Increase the amount of feedback on your trading by journaling. Journaling, and I would say also review your trades each day. Take 30 minutes or an hour after the market closes, take a break, go for a drive, go for a walk, and come back and look at your trades and see if they look rational to you. Were there too many? Did you catch the moves that your system told you about? Or were you thinking about something else? Increase the feedback on your trading. This is the point Simon just made. Avoid isolation. Find a trading buddy or a trading room. That's why isolation is very dangerous for ADD traders. Now we don't want overstimulation. I don't recommend that you be, say, in, if one trading room is good, 3 is better. No. You need to focus. You need to focus on mastering a particular system, and a trading room and a trading mentor is probably essential. Monitor your stress level and keep it very low. Monitor your stress level. You may not realize that you're stressed out, but your trading will reflect it if you are. Keep it very low. That means learn how to relax. Learn how to relax. How do you do that? Well, look it up on Google. Google it, okay? Relaxation exercises. It's called the relaxation response. You can do deep breathing. You can do inexpensive biofeedback. You can simply, as one client of mine did one time, he said, all I had to do was push my chair back 2 feet from my screen. And he said, I didn't realize how close I was to my screen. I talked to him this morning, and he said, yeah, you know what I did was I got a desk that's 3 feet deep, 36 inches, but he has his screens on the far side of the desk. And that keeps that distance from the screen and helps him reduce his stress level because he's less engaged, less intensely engaged in the market on an energetic level. And this is another thing. Take frequent breaks, especially after a loss. Don't trade all day. I can't emphasize this enough. The typical pattern in ADD trading is to overtrade, not only in terms of frequency, but in terms of duration. If you have a score above 2 or 3 on this test, you will probably perform better if you trade only half a day. You might perform even better if you only trade 3 hours. If you take a loss, like a full stop, you should probably take a break. And I mean 15-minute break, 30-minute break. Enough of a break so you can actually forget about it. You have to get to neutral. You should not be sitting at your desk wounded from a loss. Just don't. Avoid information overload. That means unplug from the news and all unnecessary input. Now, some people trade the news, I would say, in a professional manner. You know, maybe you have trade the news audio up or something like that, and you actually pay attention to it in a disciplined, methodical, careful way. But that shouldn't be CNBC. You shouldn't be reading your emails, talking to people on Skype and chatting and generally being scattered. At the same time, trading more than one market. Maybe you're following the CL because you want to, you're reading about that or you're listening to news about that at the same time you're trying to trade the TF. Well, that's going to be very difficult if you have an ADD kind of mentality. Play calming music in the background. Music that you actually don't like. Like maybe it's classical music. Let's say that you're into pop music, so play classical. Play some music that doesn't excite you or get you too much in the groove, okay? You want to have calm, non-dramatic music. And lastly, I would say find a trading mentor or coach who understands ADD. I think Simon does. And this would be very valuable for you because there's all these ins and outs of working with this ADD mentality that it's kind of slippery. So I actually recommend you work with someone who actually has been there and can therefore understand it. I've interviewed a lot of traders. I've worked with a lot of different kinds of traders, and there's definitely, I would say, 2 types of traders, and there's some of them really don't have ADD at all. They are very disciplined. They're like engineer. They're like an engineer mentality. And if I were to talk to them about like the struggles that I have sometimes in trading, I think they would look at me as though I were absolutely crazy. They would just say, well, why do you do that? Don't do that. They really lack an understanding from the inside out of what it's like to work with this type of mind. They're not particularly overly creative themselves either. They don't have the upside, but they don't have the downside. So find a mentor or a coach who understands ADD. And you've got one right here in Simon. If you want more information, you can come to my website and request a free risk profile, which is a more extensive self-test, ADD self-test, okay? You can also request a free 15-minute consultation. The website's daytradingpsychology.com or daytrading-doc.com. This is my email and my Skype name. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope I'm going to be able to see the questions here. I'm going to, if not, Simon can read them. But I'm very happy to entertain questions now about anything we talked about, or anything else you've got on your mind. Like Brian says, I'm an 8. My God, this is a revelation to me. But Brian's, if it's okay, Brian, to read your question, he says, got 8 out of 10, and he's 50 years old. Is there any hope for me changing? I feel like I may be too far gone to change, and sad face. Well, Brian, the good news is you're not too far gone. Simon himself, I don't know how old Simon is, but Simon's an adult. I'm an adult. I'm 63 years old, actually, and I didn't start working seriously on my ADD issues until my late 50s. So you're definitely not too old to change. And as Simon was pointing out, just having a really clear awareness of when you're in one state or the other, when you're in your disciplined state or you're in your what he called the ADD state, is huge. It's not the same as exerting willpower. It's a kind of awareness that takes us out of that engaged, what I call trading trance. It's a simple shift in our state of mind. Simple, but not easy to do, just like trading. Trading is sort of simple, but not easy to do. It's not easy, but it's definitely doable. And if you want to talk more about it, you can email me for a consultation, but you are not a lost cause. Okay. Bob, Mike says, you nailed me to a T. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for being honest there. And yeah, and Mike says, it's good to know there's help. Yes, absolutely there is. Lee says, I've been killing it on Sim for the past few weeks pretty consistently. How do I keep the same consistency when I go live trading, and how do I know when it's time to go live? Well, Lee, I would just say, when you go live, expect your performance to decline by at least 50%. That may not be the end of the world, but what will probably happen is that the stress from trading live will degrade your performance. So just expect it, number one. Okay, you will not be the trading genius that you are in Sim. You probably won't. What I recommend, and you can talk to Simon about this, is when is it time to go? When is it time to go live? It's time to go live when you feel like it is. It's going to be an internal decision, really, on your part. I don't recommend that you go live until you are ready. And when you do go live, I recommend you start by trading one contract, even if you've been killing it with 10 contracts in Sim. Start with one contract. Trade live for an hour or two a day, and then go to Sim. That's not unusual. Put a little bit of stress on your system, and then pull back and relax. Trade in Sim. Next day, trade live for an hour or two, very small size, go back to Sim. And as you gradually integrate the two in your trading, you'll notice that pretty soon there's not going to be that much difference between trading live or trading Sim. And at that point, you can start increasing your live trading. But trade small size, the smaller the better. Don't think about the money. When you move to live, you don't want to think about the money. You want to think about your method and your mindset. Am I following my method? Am I calm and relaxed and rational? That's all you need to think about. The money will follow. So good luck with that. And let's see, John asks, what's the fluctuation from dissociation to fear in regard to ADD, as opposed to even Steven, for instance? Yeah. The fluctuation from dissociation to fear, that's an interesting question. What John's implying here is that there are going to be many different effects of stress effects on us as traders. One of them is dissociation. That's a kind of spacing out. It's not it's a consequence of fear, it's a consequence of stress, but it's not exactly the same as feeling stress or fear. In fact, it's a defense against feeling stress or fear. The problem arises is when you are if the problem arises if when you are dissociated, you're actually trading. If you're dissociated and you're sort of spaced out and you're not engaged in the market, and that's part of what's happening with your brain, it's trying to actually disengage you from a fearful experience. And let's say you don't have a position on, good. You'll just sit there and sort of be entranced by the market. But let's say you have a position on. Let's say it's going against you. And let's say you've dissociated because your fear of loss has actually reached the crisis, your stress threshold, and your response is dissociation. Well, that's not a good thing, because you're going to be, at that point, you're going to be kind of frozen. So we need to work backwards from that sort of frozen state or a dissociated state. We actually need to feel the fear. I'd much rather you be very aware of the fear you have when trading, very aware of that anxiety, and not minimize it at all. That's why I recommend trading very small when you start trading live, because that fear is very real, and we don't want to dissociate from it. We don't want to minimize it. A lot of us, most traders are men, and we have a kind of cultural thing about not admitting that we're afraid, not admitting that we're nervous about anything, keep a stiff upper lip. Well, in trading, it's going to be very valuable information for you if you are aware that you're afraid. And because that tells you need to calm down first. If you're putting on a trade and you're really in fear, you're not going to be able to stay in that trade. You're going to get shaken out on the first little wiggle. I guarantee it. You're going to make a mistake. So don't even bother. The only time you want to enter a trade is when you have a positive expectancy, when you feel confident, positive expectancy, and you can tolerate the natural noise and jiggles that happen when you're in the trade, as long as they don't stop you out according to your predefined plan. Okay? Thanks for the question, John. Brian says, I have a suggestion that I'm using and working for me as an ADD trader. Okay. I'm trading micro Forex. Yes, it's only 10 cents per pip, and you can trade with as little as $32 total margin. Yeah, right. And he says I'm able to stay in my trades and trade the plan without so much fear of loss when the loss is only $1.50 per trade. Exactly my point, Brian. Excellent. That is I think that's the only advantage of trading spot Forex. I recommend people stay away from spot Forex for a lot of other reasons, but this is actually a great advantage, Brian. You're absolutely correct. How about that? Just if I said, hey traders, we're only going to risk $1.50 per trade. It just sounds like heaven, doesn't it? Well, it's a good illustration of how important it is that we keep our losses small. This is another thing. Let me just add really quickly. You're going to read, when you read standard trading psychology, and information on, say, position sizing, you're going to read a bunch of nonsense, psychologically speaking. You're going to read that, well, it's okay to risk up to 2% of your trading account on any one trade. That's kind of, that's commonly written. 2% of your trading account. That means if you're trading a $100,000 account, you're going to risk $2,000. That'll be your stop loss, is a $2,000 stop loss. Well, I think that's insane. And if you have any of the ADD symptoms, you will be doing serious psychological damage to yourself every time you take a full stop. I recommend in your trading, as you are, especially when you're trading live, 1/4% of your account size as your standard stop. 1/4%, 4 times less than what you'll commonly see in books. I would just say that as a general remark, you need to be in good physical shape to trade. Simon started the discussion today talking about how important it is not to trade when you're ill. Don't trade when you're hungover. Don't trade if you haven't had a meal, unless you normally skip breakfast. Don't trade when you're have mental fog. Don't trade when you're upset with your partner or under other sorts of stress. The worst thing you can possibly do is try to solve your financial problems by trading. Don't do that. If you're feeling financial stress, don't trade. Get a job. And trade part-time. Once you have your job, you'll be a better trader. And then trade part-time. You can trade in the evening. You can trade before you go to work. And you'll do a much better job trading than if you go, okay, I have to make it as a trader. Okay? Because that's the only, your only possible income. That'd be very, very difficult to do. So monitor your stress and monitor your health and trade only when you feel really good. Let's see. You can trade ETFs and SPY for the ES. That's true. Calvin is saying instead of trading the ES, which has so much leverage, trade the ETFs, like 3 times leverage, or the SPY, something like that. Excellent idea. That lowers the volatility, lowers the risk. Absolutely. Good point, Calvin. Yeah, 8 times less, says Brian. Okay. Friends don't let friends trade drunk, says Bob. Craig must be pouring your drinks. What about? Jennifer asked about chronic illness, and some people do have chronic conditions. You might have various things. It could be, it could be a diabetic condition. It could be some kind of autoimmune disease, so on and so forth. You're going to have to decide yourself whether you are impaired or not. You might not be impaired. You might not be able to do a lot of the things that a normal person can do, but you might actually have a very clear mind, and for X number of hours a day, you might be able to perform quite well. I mean, who's that guy, Stephen Hawking? He's quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and he's like a brilliant physicist. So up to a point, your physical condition can be, it's relative. And just check yourself out. Be objective about that. I personally take a number, I'm 63, I take a number of mental enhancers in the morning, all legal, by the way. Things like ginkgo that help me stay sharp. Okay. Good idea, says Brian. Okay, yeah, I think we are out of questions here. Yeah, get last minute questions. Anybody else? Otherwise, we will wind up.
So thanks, everyone. Special thanks to Dr. Kenneth Reid. And folks, enjoy your day and have a nice, wonderful afternoon or evening.
You all too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.